The snow was supposed to bury me. That's what they counted on when they pushed me down that ravine, bleeding, unconscious and alone. But I didn't die, because someone stayed. A dog they thought meant nothing, just an old mutt with cloudy eyes. But his loyalty ran deeper than their blood. Now I'm back. And I'm not just here to take back what's mine. I'm here to make them remember what they tried to forget. I still remember the crunch of boots behind me, the echo of footsteps that weren't supposed to be there, the cold wind slicing through the forest like knives through fabric, and the distant barking, worried, high-pitched, desperate. That was Samson, my dog, my best friend, my only real family. It was supposed to be a hike. Just me, the mountains, and my older brother Jason. A rare gesture of brotherly bonding, he had said. Let's clear the air, he had smiled, that fake warmth in his voice. Let's get away from the lawyers, the estate, the drama, just us. But I should have known. Jason never did anything without a reason, especially not for me. 2 weeks earlier, our father had died. Massive stroke. No warning. One moment we were arguing about the future of the family business, and the next I was standing beside his hospital bed, watching machines beep slower and slower. Dad hadn't left things clean, at least not on paper, but he had spoken to me. He told me he had rewritten the will, told me he didn't trust Jason anymore, that he'd seen the manipulation, the backdoor deals, the way Jason had isolated him in his final months. And he told me, clearly with the last strength in his breath, that everything would go to me, that I would inherit the company, the house, everything. Jason knew. I saw it in his eyes at the funeral. And when he suggested that hike a few days later, I ignored the chill in my gut and said yes. We reached the overlook by midday. There was snow in the trees, the wind howled through the pine, and Samson trotted ahead, tail wagging. I bent down to tie my bootlace. When I stood, Jason was behind me. Too close. He didn't say a word, just looked at me. No hatred, no emotion, before his hand shot forward and shoved. I didn't even scream. The drop wasn't long, but it was brutal. Jagged rocks, tree stumps, snow and ice like blades. I landed hard on my shoulder, slid another 10 feet, then slammed into a broken log. My head cracked against it. Blood filled my eyes. And then, nothing. Darkness. When I opened my eyes, it was night. I was frozen, soaked. My breath shallow. Every part of me screamed. My left leg was twisted, swollen. I couldn't move. I couldn't shout. But I wasn't alone. A warm body lay pressed against mine. Samson. He'd found a way down. His fur was damp, but his eyes were fierce. He licked my face, whimpered, curled closer to my chest, sharing what little warmth he had. Every few minutes he'd bark, once, then again, then silence, before curling back into my side. They didn't come back. I don't know how long I lay there, maybe a day, maybe 2, long enough for the sun to rise and fall again, long enough for the cold to numb my pain. But Samson never left. He hunted for me, brought scraps from the trees, squirrels, birds, anything he could catch. He nudged my face with snow when I burned with fever. He howled into the night when I stopped breathing. And when the rescue crew finally came, 2 hikers who saw smoke from a small fire Samson had accidentally kicked into the open, he stood between me and them, snarling, until they said my name. They took me to a rural hospital 3 towns away from home. My wallet was gone, my ID, my phone. They thought I was just some lost hiker, until I gave them my name. Then everything changed. You've been missing for 6 days, the nurse said. Jason had filed the report. Said I wandered off into the woods alone. Said I was unstable, that I'd been grieving too hard. He'd even held a memorial service, a closed casket, and the will. Probated and closed, said the attorney I called after regaining consciousness. The version we received left everything to your brother. You weren't mentioned. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the betrayal was so complete, so calculated, so cold, it couldn't be real. But it was. He had erased me. They all had. My uncle, who now ran the company, my cousins who were suddenly staying at the house, even my mother who hadn't answered any of the 5 voicemails I'd left. They believed the lie, or helped build it. But Samson didn't. He sat beside my hospital bed, growling at the sound of anyone unfamiliar. His paw stayed on my chest like a promise. I wasn't gone. I wasn't dead. and I wasn't finished. Because there was one thing Jason didn't know. Dad didn't just tell me about the new will. He showed me where he hid the only signed copy. Not in the office, not at the lawyer's, in the old hunting cabin, the same one Jason never went near, the one I built with Dad, nail by nail. And when I could stand again, when I could walk, with a cane in one hand and Samson leading with a leash in his mouth, we went back, to the snow, to the forest, to the place where they thought they buried me with silence. And what we found inside that cabin wasn't just the will, it was the first match I'd strike to burn down every lie they ever built. I'd been gone only 6 days, but in that time, my world had been erased like chalk in the rain. Jason moved fast, too fast. The obituary painted me as mentally unstable, depressed, prone to wandering off alone into the woods, a tragic soul broken by our father's death. No one questioned it. No one searched deeper. Not when the stable, respectable older brother was the one telling the story, but lies, no matter how pretty, leave cracks. And now I had the truth, in my hands. The original will sat in a sealed envelope wrapped in a torn flannel cloth, hidden behind the false panel of a cabinet drawer in the old hunting cabin. My father's unmistakable handwriting was scrawled across the top, for Andrew, only if they try to bury you. He knew Jason might try something. He just hadn't lived long enough to see it happen. I held that will like it was fire. It was fire, and I was going to burn down every wall they built around their lies. But first, I needed help. The next stop was Jasper, a lawyer, an old college friend who owed me more than one favour. He was the kind of man who wore sneakers with his suits and swore during depositions, but he had a mind like a trap and a heart that hated injustice. I showed him the will. His eyes widened, then narrowed. Jesus, Andy, if this is legit, and it looks it, Jason's in deep. I don't just want the company back, I said. I want everything, the house, the accounts, the truth. He nodded slowly. It's going to take more than just this paper. You've been declared legally dead. The will was probated. That's a high mountain to climb. I was also nearly murdered, Jas. And that, he said, changes everything. We filed a motion to invalidate the fraudulent will, along with a request to reopen the probate case. Jasper moved fast. He loved a fight. I wasn't sure if it was the betrayal or the drama that fueled him, but either way he was the right man for this job. Then we made it public. It started small. A leak to the local paper. Man declared dead returns after surviving fall in mountains. Claims will was faked. The journalist had a field day. My scars made for great photos. So did Samson. The internet did the rest. Within a week, the company's board was buzzing with confusion and fear. Shareholders began whispering. Jason started to vanish from public view. I knew he was panicking. I knew his pride wouldn't allow him to admit what he'd done. But the truth was already clawing its way out of the ground, and this time, I was the one shoveling. The day I returned to the house was the day silence finally broke. It was early morning. Fog still curled between the hedges like ghosts. The house hadn't changed, at least not from the outside, but inside it reeked of Jason's ambition. The warmth my mother once filled it with was gone, replaced by polished marble and sterile steel. A cold man's palace. I didn't knock. I walked in with Samson at my side, his nails clicking across the hardwood like a metronome of judgment. He growled as Jason stepped into view, barefoot, robe half-tied, a mug of coffee trembling in his hand. He went pale. "You shouldn't be here." "No," I said, "but neither should you. Security's on the way. They'll be late, and by the time they get here I'll be gone. Just came to give you a chance to look me in the eye before the truth buries you." He blinked, laughed, nervously. "What truth?" "You were lost. I reported it. Everyone grieved." "You pushed me," my voice dropped. "You stood behind me at the overlook and shoved me off that cliff like I was garbage." His jaw clenched. "Prove it." "I don't have to," I said, pulling the envelope from my coat, "because I've got this." His eyes twitched toward it. "You don't know what you're doing." "No," I said. "You don't." He lunged toward the will. But Samson moved first. His bark boomed across the room like thunder. Jason froze mid-step, staring down at the dog that once slept at his feet, now baring teeth with purpose. "I suggest," I said calmly, "you sit down before you trip on your lies." Jason backed off. Later that day, Jasper filed for a restraining order and formally accused Jason of attempted murder. The court date was set. News broke like a dam. Every media outlet picked it up. Dead man returns, accuses brother of betrayal, survives with dog's help. They loved that part. Samson as the loyal protector. He became a symbol. Hashtags, fan art, interviews. I didn't mind. He deserved it all. But beneath the headlines, something deeper stirred. People started remembering things. Employees recalled Jason's strange behaviour. My uncle suddenly stepped down. A few executives confessed they'd been pressured into fast-tracking the probate without verification, and when the court finally forced Jason to produce his version of the will, it was dated before Dad's last hospital visit. Sloppy, panicked, fake. The tide had turned. A month later, we stood before the judge. I told my story, the hike, the fall, the cold, the blood, the betrayal. And Samson sat there, silent and noble, as if he knew the weight of the moment. People wept, even the judge. Jason said nothing. His lawyer spoke for him, pleaded technicalities, blamed stress, painted it as a tragic misunderstanding. But the truth had too many witnesses now. When the verdict came, it was swift. Jason was stripped of all claims. The original will was upheld. I was declared the sole heir, and Jason was charged with attempted manslaughter and fraud. They led him out in cuffs. He didn't look at me, but I looked at him, and I didn't feel rage. I felt pity. That night, I returned to the house, alone. Samson followed quietly, sniffing each room like he was making sure the ghosts were gone. I walked into my father's study, sat in his chair, touched the armrest he always leaned on. There was peace there now, and grief, the kind that lingers even after justice. A soft woof pulled me from my thoughts. Samson looked up, eyes tired but full of quiet joy. "You did good," I whispered, pulling him close. "They thought you were just a dog, but you were the only one who never left me." He licked my hand and curled up by the fire just like he always had. Outside, the snow began to fall again. But this time, it wasn't burying me. It was cleansing everything they tried to stain. The fire crackled softly in the hearth as Samson slept at my feet. It had been 2 weeks since the court ruling. 2 weeks since I watched Jason get led away in handcuffs, his face drained of power, privilege, and the smirk he used to wear like armour. But the house didn't feel like a victory. It felt like a graveyard. They had painted over the memories in grey and white and stainless steel. New art, soulless, cold lighting, the warmth of my mother's sun-yellow kitchen. Gone. The creak in the floorboard at the top of the stairs. Silenced. Even the clock on the mantel, Dad's favourite, was replaced with some digital monstrosity that didn't tick, didn't breathe. But I hadn't just come back for revenge. I'd come back to restore what they had buried. I started with the company. Hendrick's Steel and Timber had been in our family for nearly 80 years. What started as a modest sawmill had grown into a regional empire, employing hundreds, building thousands of homes, and once building lives. But Jason had turned it into a numbers game. Mass layoffs, outsourcing, stock manipulation, anything to boost the bottom line. The first board meeting after I was reinstated was a battlefield. I walked in wearing Dad's old coat, Samson at my heel. Some of them smiled, some of them stood up, some looked away in shame. I spoke plainly. I'm not here to bleed this company dry. I'm here to bring it back to life. I reinstated pensions, rehired the laid-off union workers, reopened the factory Jason shuttered because the land was too valuable. That land had built 3 generations of paychecks. I refused to sell it for glass towers and corporate condos, and I didn't stop there. I opened a fund, named after my mother, for the families of injured workers, and I created a scholarship program for the children of employees. It was what Dad had always wanted to do. But Jason told him it wasn't modern business. Sometimes, honour is the best business. At night, I walked the halls of the house and whispered my way through the silence. Each room had a ghost. The dining room held our last family meal, awkward, silent, full of glances and fake smiles. The garage still smelled faintly of oil and sawdust from when Dad taught me how to change my first tyre. The upstairs hallway still echoed with the sound of Jason slamming doors when he didn't get his way. But the study, that room was sacred. I spent hours there, reading Dad's notes, letters he never sent, journals he kept hidden behind the fake wall in the bookshelf. I found one with my name on the front. It started like this. "If you're reading this, Andrew, then you came back, and that means you survived something Jason didn't think you would." My throat closed. I didn't want to believe it. What I saw happening to your brother. But money changes people. So does the need to win. I raised you both the same, but only one of you remembered what it meant to build something with your hands. He had known. He had seen it coming. At the back of the journal there was a note. "Check the garage, the back wall." I went straight there. Samson trotted beside me, ears perked. We moved an old shelf, pried open a panel and found a black lockbox. Dusty, heavy, untouched. Inside? Photographs, documents, voice memos, copies of letters Jason had intercepted, bank statements that showed how he'd siphoned funds from Dad's personal accounts to fund his side investments, emails that confirmed he had bribed 2 board members to side with him, and one video file. I loaded it up on an old laptop. There was Dad, tired but steady. The hospital was behind him. A heart monitor beeped softly. "If anything happens to me, I want this to be clear. Andrew is my successor. The real Will is in the cabin. Jason has gone too far, and I fear he might try something that cannot be undone. If he does, give this to the press. Let them see who he really is." My jaw clenched. My eyes burned. I never had to release that video. Jason's lies had already crumbled, but knowing that Dad had prepared for everything, that he trusted me to do what was right, even in death, meant more than I could ever say aloud. I placed the video and the documents in a sealed safe and left instructions with Jasper. "If anything ever happens to me again, make this public. Because some truths aren't just for courts, they're for history." One rainy morning, about a month later, I stood in the cemetery beside a stone that read, "James Hendricks, father builder, believer in second chances." Samson sat quietly beside me, tail curled around his feet. "I brought it back," I said. "The company, the house, everything. It's not perfect, but it's clean. It's ours again." A pause. "And Jason, he's where he belongs. I don't hate him, Dad. I think that's the worst part. I just wish he had remembered who we were." I set down a photo, an old one. Me, Dad, and Jason in front of the cabin, each holding a hammer. Mum had taken it. We were smiling. Back then, things hadn't yet fractured. Back then, we were a family. I didn't stay in the house, not forever. I turned it into something new. A recovery home for injured workers and veterans, a place to rest, rebuild and restart. Each room was named after one of Dad's old crewmen. The study became a library, the garage, a workshop. Samson had his own room, a custom-built bed, his photo on the wall next to mine. And me? I moved into the cabin, back where it all began. Simple, quiet, honest. Every nail in those walls was hammered by my hands and Dad's, and now I had the time to remember, not just what I had lost, but what I had rebuilt from nothing but blood, memory, and the loyalty of one dog who never left my side. Sometimes I wake up cold, dreams of snow, of blood in the trees, of betrayal in my brother's eyes. But then I hear Samson snore at the foot of my bed. I see the golden light filtering through pine. I feel the scars, not as wounds, but as proof. Proof that I lived, proof that I came back, and proof that no matter how deep they bury you, truth always claws its way to the surface.